Hello, welcome to another live Google Hangout on the Living Income Guaranteed. We are reaching our 99th episode today, and we have decided to make these Hangout and next week's something a little bit more special and related to who we are, what we do, why we're doing these Hangouts, and what is our purpose. We've many times said that the Living Income Guaranteed proposal, which is the foundation for these Hangouts, is an elaboration by the Equal Life Foundation. And many people might say, well, who are these guys? What do you do? Where is this foundation? And what are your purposes and aims? So because we hadn't actually taken the time to do a hangout specifically on who we are ourselves as the Equal Life Foundation, we've invited Cerise Poolman from South Africa. She's a co-founder of the foundation, and she will be here with us sharing all the ins and outs of who we are, as well as answering to any questions and comments that you may have about it. So, Cerise, welcome to the Hangout.
Hi, Marlen. Thanks for having me.
And to you, the viewer, I'd like to remind you that we will be discussing for about half an hour. So please make sure that if you have any questions, comments, you place it in the Q&A, which is an option that you have through the Google event. I know that through mobiles there is no way to do this, so please wait until the video is on YouTube to do this. And I would also like to remind you that if you can't make it live, there's always a repetition on YouTube. So to begin with, Cerise, I'd like you to place us into context. To begin with, who are we and what is the Equal Life Foundation?
Well, Equal Life Foundation is made up of a group of people who've recognized that it is our moral imperative to do something about the state of the world, meaning it's up to us to change the way that the world works, because so far the general, let's say, approach has been waiting for other people to do it, but there is no other people. It's up to us. So we've recognized that responsibility that each person has, and we are now living that responsibility by looking for solutions, investigating what kind of solutions will work, investigating what the problems are, and within that, seeing that the global issues are not necessarily isolated issues or isolated problems with isolated causes, but that everything is interconnected. And within what we're doing at Equal Life Foundation, we are developing approaches that will address and hopefully solve these issues that are so interconnected. So we have a very holistic view of what issues we're facing, what the causes of those issues are, and how we can solve those issues.
So in terms of the people, because we know that around the world there's lots of groups and that dedicate themselves to particular causes, many NGOs, activists. So what do you consider makes the Equal Life Foundation quite a unique group of people? What is within it that has brought us together?
I'd say the main cause is the recognition that the problems in the world are not isolated, that we need to find holistic solutions, but also that there is a very human aspect involved here, and included in what we do is a psychological approach to let's say that it's the recognition that who we are as people is how we will create our world. The world is a reflection of humanity. So this world is basically showing us who we are as humanity and showing us that who we are as humanity is not really all that nice at the moment. So we are including in our approaches a form of a psychological approach that, for lack of a better term at the moment, we shall call it self-responsibility and honesty-oriented psychological approaches. Okay, it's a bit of a mouthful, but it's a pretty kind of pretty good overview of how we're approaching the issues, not only from a global perspective, but also from a humanitarian perspective.
I would say that this is also quite aligned to what many scholars and people around the world are coming to realize, that we as human beings are being the ones that have created the most changes in this last time of humanity's history on Earth. That's why there's the Anthropocene as a new geological era where we are the ones producing the most change. Of course, not for the betterment, but for all the destructive reasons that we've reviewed in many Hangouts. So I would say that we are quite aligned with that purpose and principle that is emerging not only with ourselves as an organization, but many other people around the world are, of course, realizing that this trend that we are currently following is not sustainable and is not producing regeneration of life on Earth. So we need to change. So with regards to this, Cerise, what would you say are some of the objectives or aims and purpose of the Equal Life Foundation in general?
Well, I think that this might be a very good time to reference the Bill of Rights, Equal Life Foundation's Bill of Rights. Let me just open it up. It isn't complete at the moment, although it does have the basics. And we will be including the link to the Bill of Rights in the video description so anyone can come and look at it. But basically, let's call it the primary goal of Equal Life Foundation is to create a world that is best for all life. Now, when I say all life, I don't mean just animals, just people. I'm including the plants, the oceans, the environment, nature as a whole, looking at creating a world that will be safe for all living beings and that will allow for the comfortable lives of all living beings, as well as giving every being the opportunity to have the best possible life that they can have without, let's say, without even the possibility that that they will be enforced into slavery or oppression or any kind of things that we see in this world today. So that is the very big goal. And if you read through the Bill of Rights, you'll see the starting point of the rights that we've, let's say, jotted down for at this moment. Like I said, the starting point, which is covering humans at the moment, but we will also be developing a more holistic bill, or developing this bill to be more holistic so that it includes all other aspects of life on Earth, so animals and plants and the planet, let's say.
Yeah, and also within the perspective of what we were mentioning, human beings being the main actors in this planet in terms of having the capacity to transform it, we have also realized that, well, there's currently a lot of abuse because these basic human rights are not guaranteed. So by starting there, then we can look at how will things change once that we take care of those basic components, which are also presented in a video that we will also be linking, the fundamental rights by the Equal Life Foundation. More like guaranteeing the basic needs to live in dignity. But as Cerise is mentioning, the context and the vision of the Equal Life Foundation is more global, holistic, and pertaining to all aspects of life. It's not only the what we usually look at in the Hangouts in terms of living income as economics and politics, but looking at the politics of life, so to speak. I'd like to ask you, Cerise, so that people get a context of what we've been doing up to now. Can you share what is our field of participation and activity at the moment?
At the moment, we're limited to basically digital participation, where everything we're doing is on the internet. We're only at the beginning, and we're doing as much as our funding and our manpower allows for. So we've been focusing mainly on researching the issues that we're facing, developing solutions to those issues. One of those proposals being living income guaranteed. But we've also been looking into other aspects and looking into things like animal abuse and food sustainability, and we haven't as yet developed very detailed proposals for solutions in those fields. But I mean, if you look at what we're facing, there is so much that needs to be done, so many aspects that need to be covered. So for now, we have been, like I said, focused on, we've started with living income because it is something that is becoming more and more prominent in the world. People recognizing that the way that we are living now, in terms of the economy, is it's not supportive, and this is something that can actually work. It can actually give people dignified lives, and from there already gives opportunity to change so much else, and have ripple effects that improve the lives of so many other living beings in the world.
Yeah, because we've also realized that most of the abuses come from the lack of money. So why don't we instead ensure that everyone gets their fair share as part of being part of this ecosystem, and actually then prevent the massive abuses, because people would then be having this security for life. And that's like a basic principle. But then we also touch a lot upon psychological aspects. So you mentioned earlier about self-responsibility and honesty as a psychological approach. How can you define this? How can you explain us what this practically implies, and how is it applied within the Equal Life Foundation?
Okay, well, let's break down the statement. Self-responsibility would imply the realization that each one of us, each human being on this planet, is responsible for the world that we have created. We are the ones, as humanity, who have created what is here, like you mentioned earlier. So our participation in this world, whether it's deliberate or tacit, is an acceptance of what we have created. So in recognizing that we are actually participating in creating and perpetuating the world as it is now, we so can too participate in creating change. So that is the aspect of self-responsibility, where each person can start participating in living differently and living in a way that is actually supportive and actually supports life, as well as investigating, let's say, the more practical component of that, of in this world that we've created, how are we actually affecting the world? How do the products you buy support the abuses that happen in the world, for example? So how do our lifestyles contribute to all of the issues that we see, for example? That's another part of self-responsibility. Then the aspect of honesty is being willing to recognize what we have done, being willing to realize that we have not created a life and a world that is supportive for all living beings. we have created a world that is full of abuse and exploitation. And we have to be willing to recognize that. We have to be willing to see that. Because if we refuse to see that simple point, see what we have created, then we will obviously not make any kind of attempt to change it. So we essentially need to change the way that we live from being focused on our personal bubbles of our personal lives to being seeing how we actually are affecting everything around us. How something you buy in a shop here is contributing to the deforestation halfway across the world, for example. So, did I answer that entirely? Are you satisfied?
I would like to also add the aspect that I would say distinguishes us as a group of people. As you were mentioning, we definitely have integrated within our awareness that there is no one to fight against. A lot of NGOs and groups define their activity as antagonists to a particular set of politicians or corporation or just an entire government. And there is no actual recognition of, okay, this entire system, as you were mentioning, is something that we created. So this psychological change, so to speak, it does take you through a personal process that I would say that through being part of this organization, it really changes your way in which you participate in the world, because you can no longer get angry at the world, which, for example, in my case, I was, but instead one learns to look at the problem, and then, as you were mentioning, we focus on discussing, interacting, and finding solutions. I would say that this is also maybe an aspect that not many people get to see, but everything that comes through my mouth is not only coming from me, but it represents ourselves as a group of people that are continuously in communication, looking at what's going on in the world, discussing solutions, and then bringing them through these hangouts, blogs, podcasts, and everything that we can do to be part of the conversation within that starting point of self-responsibility, and looking back at ourselves and kind of placing the finger back at ourselves instead of looking out there at the problem. Would you like to add anything to this?
No, I'm quite satisfied, thank you.
Cool. So education. Many times we look at politics and economics, but there's a lot more that goes beforehand when it comes to someone being born into this world. And there's a lack of this realization of self-responsibility because it's not given in the education system. So what is that, like, the part of education that we promote as Equal Life Foundation, and why do you see it as important?
Okay. A child's education should prepare them for being effective and, let's say, contributory members of society. A child should finish their education and be able and empowered to do something to contribute to the well-being of the world as a whole, or at least to their community, which then does ripple effect out into the world. So at the moment, education is limited to imparting knowledge and information that is very limited in practical application. I mean, there's not much that you can actually do with what you learn in school. So that aspect needs to change, as well as how children are taught, because the education system is so, let's call it exclusionary, because it teaches only in one way, and only a small percentage of children will respond to that one way of teaching and be able to keep up, which is why you have the effect of having your in South Africa, you say it's your A, and then your B, and then your C, and then your D class, which is the rank of the students according to their academic performance. The only reason that you're seeing this effect is because the method of teaching is is so limited and doesn't allow for the varied ways that children learn and take in information. So that's something that seriously needs to be addressed in our global education system, developing a way that empowers children to learn effectively and to learn skills and tools that will really empower them in life to become effective members of the community, to become supportive, critical thinkers. Yeah.
I would like to then go on to other aspect which entails, first of all, the constitution of the Equal Life Foundation, so that people get a reference as to why is it called a foundation and what kind of organization is it at a legal level. So can you share a little bit about that?
Okay, well, Equal Life Foundation is the name of the company. It is a not-for-profit company established in South Africa, which means that all of the funds that the company receives must go towards achieving the goals of the company. There are no shares that are paid out to the directors or the members or shareholders. It's all basically the funds must be used for the achievement of the company's goals, which is basically all of these points that we've been discussing at during this hangout.
Okay, and when we talk about our long-term vision and our mission and looking a bit more into the future, what would you say are future projects that are envisioned as part of our aims?
One of the big projects that we definitely plan to do is to do a sort of a pilot project for living income, but also for the principles of the Equal Life Foundation. So, for example, implementing the Equal Life Foundation's Bill of Rights, and building a community of people who live by these principles, who are a part of the living income guaranteed system. And we at the moment are planning to do this in South Africa because that's where we are, and South Africa is most certainly a country that needs solutions, and it has the kinds of social issues that need to be addressed that are found in many places in the world. So it's going to be a very good testing ground to see how does living income work in practice, and how are these principles lived in practice when someone with an impoverished background is placed in such a community and supported and guided in changing their lifestyles, which would be a huge, huge change from what you currently see in South Africa.
Yeah, I would say that some people might think that, well, there's already basic income pilot programs going on. What makes this a different one? But as we have been explaining, there is this psychological aspect that we see as primary and very important to look at and consider when giving support to people, so that there is also this change of perspective as to how human relationships and relationships with the environment are changed upon receiving these kind of support. So can you share a little bit about that aspect of integrating the, let's call it psychological support or assistance for self-development that would entail such kind of pilot project?
Well, I think a very important aspect in that kind of pilot project would be to choose the community leaders very carefully. By that, I mean to choose people who are committed to creating a better world and committed to the well-being of others. So they need to be standing and living as examples of what is possible, and in that respect be rather selfless. So it might be a challenge to find people, especially when looking in this particular world. But I think that once we scratch the surface a little bit, we'll start seeing the people who have simply been stunted and who have been forced to survive in a dog eat dog world, but actually do have really cool principles that they already have integrated within themselves. So having those community members to stand and live as examples, as you slowly start bringing in new community members, that'll be a very important aspect, as well as the education aspect. Empowering people, for example, to learn how to read, because reading is one of the building blocks. Well, it can be one of the building blocks to developing critical thinking, to start looking at things practically, objectively, looking at the whole picture instead of focusing on one's opinions and beliefs. So education will play a huge role, especially since there's so the education system in South Africa, especially for the impoverished people, is it's basically useless. I mean, the kids come out of school with no practical skills, or their pass rates, they get 30 to 50% in their exams. It's useless. So yeah, so we'll be looking at those two aspects, the community leaders and education. And am I missing something? Do you have anything to add?
Well, in relation to the development of this plan is, of course, something that is not fully in detail, but what matters is the direction of it, which you've laid out here. And also to explain that the purpose of a pilot project is to place into application what we are constantly promoting as principles, and so be able to show to, let's say, the world the kind of results that can be encouraged and that can emerge from approaching not only, for example, the provision of a basic income, but also this psychological support and this environmental awareness and this building of supportive networks that is very much needed as part of the holistic change that you were mentioning about. I'd like to also ask you a little bit about your own background. I mean, many times people are motivated to be part of a change for many reasons. So if you can share a little bit about yourself and what your area of expertise is, if you'd like to call it that.
Well, I would definitely say that my journey started within, let's call it a sense of empathy and compassion for what I was seeing in the world, and seeing what kind of suffering exists. I started broadening my horizons and looking outside of my personal life to see, what are the living conditions of other people, what are the living conditions of animals, what are some of the things in this world that happen so often but are so often not spoken about. And when I started to see the ugliness in the world, I realized that, first of all, it has to change. And then I kind of, let's say, I fumbled along until I eventually got to a point where I saw, yes, it has to change, but I have to be a part of that change. I can't just sit here and say, point my finger and say this needs to change. Nothing will happen. I need to be a part of the change. I need to create the change. I need to live it. I need to stand as an example and show the people around me what is possible. We don't have to live the way that we have been living. We can create a better world, and we can live according to principles that are honoring and supporting life. So yeah, that's basically my path in a nutshell.
I would say that there is also a component that, as I was mentioning, many people might not see, and that is the fact that we have very close relationships, even if apart. I mean, I'm in Mexico, she's in South Africa, many people are in Europe, the US, everywhere around the world. But there's always this common ground that no matter where we come from or what language we spoke, we obviously communicate in English, but what I mean is the principles that unite us are something that we see if every human being decides to tag along with, then this process of change and this transition that many are calling as the ongoing process of moving from the old to the new will be much easier because it facilitates agreement creation, it facilitates the ability to come together to form a commonsensical solution, which means considering what is best for all, where do we have to take responsibility, what needs to be changed within ourselves as participants of the world to be effective members of society, and not only like in the world out there, but it really begins by that level of interactions that we hold with people around us as well, and
Yeah.
our day-to-day living, which I see so important to also let everyone know about, and what makes us a one-of-a-kind group of people that have been walking for over 7 years, 8 years some. So we're quite consolidated, even if living apart, we are united by that same principle. And we are always inspired by each other, which is also very important for us, for our growth, and educating ourselves from each other as well, so that then we can share it back to everyone else to possibly join in or walk with, as we call it. So going on that aspect, Cerise, how can people participate or be part of the Equal Life Foundation? What can you tell us about this?
Well, at the moment, like we said in the beginning, everything is still based on the internet. So that means that participating in our social network platforms is very supportive. On Twitter, using the Equal Life Foundation tags. There's an Equal Life Foundation Twitter account, so tagging the Twitter account. Then there's the Equal Life Foundation Facebook page, where we're posting regular posts showing some of the issues in the world, posts showing what kind of solutions can be implemented for those issues. So educating yourself on these things, as well as sharing the posts, starting discussions, interacting. And then, of course, we're always in need of more funds, because the more money we have, the more ability we have to move. At the moment, Equal Life Foundation is funding a very small group of people to be able to do what we do. And if we can expand that base of resource and support, we can start hiring more people and start doing more projects. For example, like developing movies, music, TV series, even adverts, and really start pumping out media and getting people, being able to financially support people to dedicate themselves to doing this work. Because at the moment, a lot of what is done is by people who are offering their free time to create content and to write blog posts, for example. So any little bit helps in the bigger picture, even if it is participating just on the social networks and helping to get the word out there, to show that, there are solutions, and the approach that we're taking is an approach that can actually work. It can actually create change.
I would also add that many times we get questions as to whether we provide funds for any other causes and stuff like that, which we don't, for the reasons that Cerise explained. And it is also to point out how it is regular participation that any person can have in social media that can be supportive toward our principles and what we do by sharing the content that we create, as Cerise is explaining, which is published in both our pages on Facebook, the Equal Life Foundation and Living Income Guaranteed pages, because we realize that currently the world is moving a lot within the internet, so why not using it as the best tool that we have to create this awareness and to spread the word, so to speak. I like very much the idea of these future projects because we definitely have realized the effect that even little things like, or not little, but a thing like a series can start implementing like a new mindset within people, and how pervasive it is to get to people's awareness and minds through this kind of entertainment that can be supportive. So I would say that this is a very cool idea. And of course, we have some people that are already in the move to create, to become movie directors, and that have contacted us and that say that they would be willing to do something that supports our principles, our values. But of course, this is a calling out for many more people, writers, producers, and any creative person actually that would be willing to also become part of our same voice and stand by the same principles, because this is an organization that is not funded at all by any corporation or anything like that. It is a group of regular people that want you, creative person, with whichever resources you have, to become part of the same effort to change the world, and beginning with this change of ideas, change of mindset, and implementing new principles that haven't been seen, I'd say, for a long time in this earth, or ever, for that matter. So, Cerise, any last words to finalize our hangout?
No, I'm pretty happy. Maybe just that, yeah, watch this space.
Yes, I would say that there's a lot more coming our way. We have been doing these hangouts for about 2 years, and it is only the start of kind of seeing how we're going to be moving and connecting with a lot of people. It's been very great to be doing this as well, to know that we're not alone in this new mindset of solution-based mindset, so to speak, and these principles. There are many people talking about the same things. So I hereby once again invite you, if you want to come and share any topic, idea, project that you may have in relation to, and that you see is in accordance to what we've discussed today, let us know through the Facebook page, Twitter, email. We have that ability and that space to give each other this, let's say, a hand, so to speak, to promote these ideas and these principles and any other solution that you may have, because that is what really empowers us and encourages us to keep going, even if we see everything else falling apart and the world is full of conspiracy theories and potential breakdowns and fallouts. We focus on the solutions. We consider, yes, a problem, but we mostly encourage that vision for the future to come. So thanks a lot, Cerise, for your perspectives and presentation here.
Thanks.
And thanks to you, the viewer. Next week we will be having our special 100th episode about the living income guaranteed, of course. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and until next time. Bye, Cerise.
Bye.